ways that are running Cord in a Box. So Cord in a Box is a virtualized cord that can run on a single server. It runs a head node and one or more compute nodes. So what we're going to do is we have, I think, 8 Cord in a Boxes running over there. So we're going to give, I think you might have to break up into teams since we only have 8. We're going to give each team access to your own dedicated Cord in a Box that you can use to complete the tutorial. So we're just trying to get the details for that sorted out. While we do that, I can maybe get started on the overview, and then we'll come back to that as soon as we can. Right, so let me say, so this tutorial is about developing and onboarding services in Cord. So the idea is you have a VNF and you want to integrate it into Cord. So we've seen from the talks the last couple of days that what you need to do is you need to encapsulate this into an XOS service that you can then deploy on the site. And so this is going to walk you through the steps that are needed to do that. We're going to do it, not for a real VNF. It's a very simple service that we're going to build mainly by cut and paste, but at least you'll see all the steps that are involved and go through it yourself. All right, and it looks like Zach has some cards. So, as I mentioned, we only have 8 servers that are available. So, let's see. If you are wanting to actually be hands-on and not just sit here to watch, can you raise your hand? Okay, so let's make sure we have at least.
Also, you let them know that we're doing multiple sessions.
There are multiple sessions, yes. I did not say that. But
so there are multiple sessions of this. This is going to get run now, and then it's going to get run twice tomorrow. So if you want to be hands-on, and just you'd rather get another talk, or if there's another talk that won't be conflicting, yeah, work it out of time.
So session is tomorrow.
They are repetitive, or they are the
Same exact session 3 times.
Okay.
So if you're not able to get one, you can sit through this one and then get hands-on tomorrow, or.
Okay.
Sounds like you were trying to convince people to leave.
But they'll keep coming back. So, yeah.
We want them for our sessions.
Yeah. Whatever works best with your schedule, I think we should have made it more clear. But
Right, sure. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. So, just to give you an example of an actual use case, what is involved here. So, this is a picture of the mCord use case. And so it involves a number of VNFs running in VMs. That's what these boxes are. And these clouds are networks that are connecting together the VNFs. And so bootstrapping this use case in Cord involves creating all of these VMs running different VNF images. It involves networking them all together to create this bigger picture. The red dots are the interfaces that connect the VMs to the network. Then once you have these VMs up and running, you need to actually do some configuration inside the VM to set up the VNF, and then actually start the VNF software up. So that's just to kind of bootstrap the use case and get things running. So all of these steps that I mentioned are done through XOS services. And we've been getting different views on XOS and services and modeling and synchronizers the last couple of days. So an overview of this tutorial. So it's about how to onboard a VNF onto Cord. And this is just kind of very basic beginner steps. It's not going to go maybe into any kind of great depth about like service idea of the scope of this tutorial. So we're going to start with our own VNF, a VM image that we'll provide for you. And we're going to build an XOS service around this VNF. So there's a model that abstracts the service, and then there's a synchronizer that configures and manages the VNF when it's running. So we'll onboard the new service onto a running pod, cord in a box, and I mentioned some of you came in a little in the last couple of minutes. I mentioned that this black box over here in the corner is running a number of instances of cord in a box, and so anyone who actually wants to go through the hands-on part of this should talk to Zach over there and get an IP address so you can actually log into one of those cord in a boxes and follow along. So we're going to, once you have your cord in a box, you're going to onboard this new service onto this running pod. Going to run a Tosca recipe to spin up the VNF. Whoa. And then that, I'm glad you're impressed. And then once the VNF is up and running, we are going to use the XOS GUI to reconfigure that VNF. And then finally, we'll go through a development cycle to see what it looks like to actually change the synchronizer playbook and then redeploy the service synchronizer container. So those are the steps that we're going to go through in this tutorial. Are there any questions so far? If you have a question, feel free to interrupt. This is just very informal presentation.
Is this cycle also can be run on a real core system?
Yeah, absolutely. So a cord in a box is a real cord system. It's just everything's virtualized. But it has got a head node, it's got compute nodes, it's running ONOS, it's got software switches that ONOS is controlling. So all of the pieces are there. It's just all virtualized. But you can absolutely go through this exact same set of steps on a physical pod.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, we'll start with a brief tour of the XOS GUI. And so if you do have a cord in a box that you want to go through these steps yourself, and then here's some instructions on how to log in. So,
Do you want to distribute?
yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead. Anybody
Okay, so
who wants access.
we actually have 7 right now.
So
We got a range of hands. I want to know if we have more or less than we need.
Who's raising hands?
If you want to have a node. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I can do it some other time.
Yeah. Okay. So we have 2 sessions tomorrow. If you, okay, who still keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Alrighty. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're good.
people can team up if
Here you go. And you can team up.
more people that we can watch over somebody's shoulder. So that's the IP address of your cord in the box. And so the first thing that you're going to want to do, okay, I'll wait.
Okay.
Right. The first thing you want to do is get on the network so you can access that IP.
Password is org. Okay. So connect to that Wi-Fi network, and then you'll be able to SSH to this. And the SSH is cord at your IP address. So
Right. So that's the first step is to SSH into that.
at IP, and the password is. It's just cord.
reason this is the first step is you need to get the credentials to log into the GUI. So once you're in, you can cd to this directory here and then cat this file and it'll show you a long string which is the password for the admin user in the GUI.
And if anyone is having an issue, just raise your hand and Zach or I will come to you.
I just logged into, I just connected that Wi-Fi and then do an SSH.
So the URL of the GUI is here. So once you have this credential, go to this URL, a login box will pop up. That's the username, and then the password is the one that you got here.
That's strange.
That's correct, and you're connected to ONF. So is it possible that some of the SSH channels cannot be up?
That is possible,
That would be unfortunate.
but
Are you able to SSH it? Do you have that in the SSH? We don't know.
in that, yes.
Your operation network. Too many applications.
Yeah, so we're having to do two different things. One of them is to SSH, and the other will be to log in. So first, for SSHing, you'll want to use username Cord.
Right, yes.
CORD.
So here's, this is,
And the password Cord.
so let's see, step
We'll
one,
just down here.
connect to the network.
You may add the password. Yeah, Cord. Just Cord. Yeah, just Cord for both, and then hit OK, and let's see if
Mine said you're offering your RC.
unable to make a connection. Let's try it.
We're not getting into the URL.
Okay.
Is it possible it's not?
Yes, it is possible. So let's see.
I had it with XOS.
Well, first let's try SSH.
Yeah,
Let's try it.
Let me see if I can figure out what's going on with it.
Right. So Zach,
Oh, you're not in the
Yeah, we should do
So we're gonna get DNS failure. She has an SSH failure. I'm trying to figure out.
okay. We also, I guess, maybe need to check the SSH tunnels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an automated way
Well,
to
let's
do
try
that?
again. Maybe we just type the.
Although we could just grep it, grep 8080 on that thing.
No, Docker is
Right. Well, okay. So I have
No, you don't need 8080 for the SSH.
yeah, that's fine.
I could try it.
That's normal. Don't worry. There's
No, just SSH in the
a virtual head node that's running Docker, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let me see if I can. Everybody else is here, so let me see if I can help you get set up on.
Yeah, there you go.
UI.
I wish we could like show both the slides and at the same time.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Projector.
Well, I have some help.
Yeah.
Alright, so.
Well, when I'm getting the slides back up so I can tell you what to type.
You can tell me what to type.
I'll tell him what to type. You know what to type.
Right, so this issue with the web UI not being available on some nodes, this is a bug in Vagrant, the Vagrant libvirt plugin. It sets up SSH tunnels for port forwarding, but sometimes they die. So the solution processing.
Forwarding.
Yeah, here, so we want you to CD to this direction. Card, bill, platform, dash install.
Just a normal.
I don't know, credential, you might have an unusual SSH. Yeah, you're right.
So the network problems that we've had the last couple of days kind of knocked us back a little bit with the preparation here. Just right before this, we were trying to get everything set up, and we didn't have a chance to actually do any testing. So that's what's going on right now. You're doing the testing for us. So yeah, apologies for that. But I don't know this particular. Is there anybody who's actually like succeeded?
So that is gonna be the password.
Logging into
the
the GUI.
UI, so you'll need to like.
Can you go back to the,
Copy paste that.
the how to get to the GUI?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to fix this one too, I think.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
In a web browser. Okay.
So let's try going to the web address, which is up here. If you can open like a second window, so keep your SSH around. Colon 88. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna have to fix this one. You know, the fixing instructions handy
For the
for the SSH.
well, so if you have access to this document, the hands-on tutorial.
Oh, is it on there?
Yeah.
It's in the sanity check section.
Yeah.
We will attend another session.
Okay, yeah.
Down at the bottom.
So your error is quite mysterious.
I'm looking for it.
Yeah. So I guess it's, I don't know, is it Apache that's some plugin that does a proxy or something, or what?
Yeah. So we do.
Maybe there's an Apache log or something like this.
Yeah. No.
But that's-
Do we have extra nodes in case somebody's node doesn't seem to be working? It cannot
No,
be
we do not.
easily fixed.
We do not.
Yeah, so this is so good. Let's do
Well, so
sanity
maybe
checks.
this will turn into like a session on how to debug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you show us in your environment and the rest can pick up later?
Do you have access to Gmail?
I'm sorry?
We all have, core pods, in our own labs, so can
Sure.
you just show us,
Yeah.
which one?
I guess, yeah, maybe you'll watch me do the
Exactly, yeah.
hands-on tutorial. And
Okay, and send it to.
so anybody who's able to follow along can do it, and we'll try to get these problems fixed for the next round of the tutorial, but I guess maybe we'll just move
At
on.
who.com? At Gmail.
So let me pull up the XOS GUI on a node that I believe is working.
QIAM. I think I got that. Man.
Let's see.
Oh.
I see some people already have it up, so that's good.
Okay, good.
If you are having trouble, let me know. I can run around and help. Okay, so you're unable to get to them. Okay.
Okay, I've sent that. I think we're going to look under IP address to
Is there any link?
Oh,
Show link?
Live.
Yeah, I'm able to.
So you have, okay, yes, yes. I'll show you how to get it. So here is a short link to the Google Doc that has
That's a,
has the instructions for going through the tutorial, and then there's a link to the slides.
So Andy, are the
Yes.
IP addresses different on each one? Are they the same
Control
for the
B
fixer
and
and
then
the
C.
They're the same.
Okay, they're the same, and to get into a TMOX, we just
Okay,
type
so now you have two sessions.
Okay, TMOX. So going
Go
to
back
the
and forth
SSH,
between Control B
Type
and
Tmux.
0 and Control B and 1. So you're in 1 now,
TMUX.
it's a little star. And you go up to 0. Okay. But hitting 0, it's
Yeah.
a star.
Enter.
Right.
and then we're gonna have to paste that command that I emailed you.
So, okay, so this link will bring up a
So
document.
then you went back to it. So
Look it up.
what we have to do is we have to make a
It
new
looks
tunnel
like this.
for it.
So are you able to access this document at that, at the short link? Okay, and then there's the slides. Oh, did we edit it? Okay, anyhow, I'm gonna put a link to the slides in here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so to access the page. Do you have the tunnel docs somewhere, Andy, or I know you're looking at something else?
And the tunnel docs are in the folder.
Okay, I can find them.
Oh, great. Okay.
Ready?
Make sure you can access the slides at the link. Okay, good.
Do we need to exit TMOX? Just stay in?
No, stay, leave.
Yeah,
Leave it in
so you can disconnect, Control B, and then D will disconnect from TMUX. So you leave it running,
Yeah,
but
but maybe we should verify the UI is up, so go into the other tab. Yeah,
So how
And then
how do I
refresh
access
it.
this movement doc? I need to access it?
okay, it's at this,
okay, there we
it's
go.
at that URL. People were asking about how to get to the slides, and so there's a link to the slides at that dot.
So now you need to log in using XOS admin at opencore.org.
Zero?
Yeah, we need that big long password that you
Yes,
had
yes,
a while
small
ago,
O.
if you still have that thing handy someplace.
Okay. Want to run this command?
Maybe TMUX. It was Control V, D to exit TMUX.
Yes.
So yeah, let's exit TMUX inside of that shell. So Control V
Is the network
and then D.
And
Yep.
Not too bad.
And then
because
There it
people,
is.
you may want people to just download the doc if the network's like.
It's not been bad. All right.
yeah, save that in handy place.
So people are trying to get
Yeah, so we can
connected.
just go back
Well,
in
that's
this.
happening. Let me give you a very.
No, we're done with that.
Can you keep your voice down a little bit? Give you a very brief tour of the XOS UI. Unfortunately, this talk conflicts with the UI talk that's going on in the main room now. So on the left, here in the UI, we have different core models. So for instance, nodes, instances, slices, as well as service-specific models. So Address Manager, Fabric, ONOS, VTN, these are all services. So let's click on the nodes model. So this shows you a list of the compute nodes that Cord knows about. There's only one in this Cord in a box configuration. So you can find out more detail about an object by clicking on its name. So we're drilling down into the node object, that particular node object. And at a high level, it's got a name, it's got a site that it's deployed at. There's much more information about nodes in the data model. So this is just sort of the high-level UI view. But if you're a developer and you want to actually dig down into the data model, there's a way to do that through the GUI. And if you press the slash key, no, I can't. Let's see, how do I fit that on my screen? Okay, the slash key is a keyboard shortcut that brings up a panel that tells you about some other keys that are useful. So in particular, for debugging the data model, the A key is the useful thing. So if you press, let's get that out of the way. If you press a debug tab pops up here in the GUI. And so now you can actually drill down into objects and see all of the fields in the data model using that tab. So debug, and there's some date fields, there's a number of fields that have to do with synchronization, talking about the status of that object. I'm not really going to go into this, but as you are developing your service, then this can be a useful feature. So it's available on all of the models in the GUI. So later on, you'll see the service that you're developing here, and you're going to be able to use that debug tab to drill down into objects that you create in your service. Okay. So here's a picture of, next we're going to talk about the containers that are present on the head node. Here's a picture of all the different container groups that are on the head node. So ONOS containers are running there, XOS containers, OpenStack, there's some automation containers related to Metal as a service for provisioning nodes. There's some other containers.
In the card in a box, the SSH was to the head node, or is it to some level above that?
So Cord in a Box is the server running a virtual head node or virtual computer. When you do SSH, you just get to the server. And then you need to take another step. So I'll show you on the next slide in order to get to the head node, and then we'll start looking at these containers. So on your server, if you SSH head 1, that will get you into the virtual head node. Just wait a minute to see if that works for anyone. I guess I should say this one. What? It can't resolve head 1?
No, it's a bit.
Okay. Alright.
Yeah.
It's okay?
Give it a shot.
So then if you type Docker PS, you should see a lot of containers.
I don't know what.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
So then you can inspect the different container groups that I showed you. I flashed up really briefly on that previous slide. You can inspect the container groups using these commands. So the XOS containers, so I should mention that we use Docker Compose to manage the containers, almost all of the containers running on the head node. And the way Docker Compose works is that there's a Docker Compose file that lives somewhere that describes the group of containers and the relationship between them. No. thought that the network problems were resolved and that the nodes were up and running, but this seems like it's not the case.
There are a few that are working.
Are there?
Like hers is working.
Okay. So for, again, apologies to people whose nodes aren't working. I can show some of these commands on my screen. Just to walk you through it. This is disappointing. It's not working. So here's taking a look at the XOS container.
Yours is
That was just a semi. Yes. Dash. Dash.
So it's hard to fit everything on the screen, but here's a look at the XOS containers that are running. So there's a number of synchronizer containers, the Onos synchronizer, the Fabric synchronizer, OpenStack synchronizer. There is some core services like Chameleon. This container is where the service models and the core models actually live.
thing is,
Console is running as well.
because of this.
And so there's, on the order of 15 containers here, probably. And likewise, I mentioned the Onos containers. So there's an opt Onos port directory, and we can run OPS here, and we see there's just a single
So this one should.
Onos port, XOS Onos container, and this is the Onos controller that's controlling the overlay of the compute nodes, and likewise, groups of it. Once you have access to a working port in a box, you can go through and inspect the different groups of containers that are running.
While I run the source, the command shows that there's some variable does not set. So is that any variable which you set like my host or Docker host Docker?
Does it give you any output?
It just give me no output and with warning.
Yeah, my host variable's not set.
I think Docker's not so.
Yeah.
He's also
So I was able to run Docker PS and
Okay.
it shows an old container.
The working nodes are 5, 3, 4, and it looks like, 5, 3, and 4.
Yeah, five's working.
Yeah.
All right.
We lucked out over here.
Oh, so one other thing I wanted to mention is currently the way we're deploying OpenStack right now is not using Docker containers but LXC. And so if you want to see the OpenStack containers for the OpenStack services like Keystone and Neutron, then LXC list is the command that you would use. And actually the output is a little bit nicer than the output from Docker, but you can see them running there.
So can you just explain that a bit? I mean, are these another set of containers running on the same machine?
This is all in the head node.
Yeah.
These are containers running on the head node. It's a different flavor of containerization using LXC containers instead of Docker. This is not really, an important feature of the core design. This was just basically expediency, yeah.
And function of these VMs or these containers some other functions to do with nesting board?
Right, so these are running the OpenStack control services. So OpenStack consists of 10 different microservices, and all of these, all of these containers are each running a different service. So this provides the OpenStack GUI, the Nova Cloud Controller is kind of the brains that takes care of setting up VMs. Neutron API provides the Neutron networking API, and MongoDB is the database, and Keystone is authentication. So all of these things are running on the head node as well, setting up the VMs on the OpenStack compute nodes. And part of the work that the Container Brigade is looking into is to make all of this uniform. So we're using Docker every place else except here. This should really be Docker, and so.
But they were talking about Kubernetes as an overall thing to manage everything. Is that the plan?
Right, I think, yeah, that is the longer term plan to use Kubernetes to manage all these services.
The OpenStack as well as the Docker ones, or best Docker?
Everything would be running in Docker containers, including these OpenStack services on top of Kubernetes is the plan, yeah. So right now, as I mentioned, we're using Docker Compose to bring up these services, so we'd be using Kubernetes instead. Okay. So on the head node, the core source code has this folder structure. So if you SSH, well, you just on the server that you have access to, the port in a box, when you log in, you'll see this core directory. If you go in there, there's a number of subdirectories. The important ones for this hands-on are the build directory. That's where the build steps are actually launched from, and the orchestration/XOS services directory is where all of the services, the source code for all of the services that run on the pod is hosted. So here in this picture, so there's a VSG service, it's got its own directory. Here is a VEE service, and the service that you will be building will live in another directory under XOS services. Okay, documentation. We've already seen this slide, so this is the write-up for the rest of the tutorial. It lives in that Google Doc. The general best source for info documentation for Chord is the guide, guide.openchord.org. And then, I don't know, Slack, I guess, is the second best, because there's a lot of things that aren't thoroughly documented. Okay, the steps to complete the tutorial, and these are also summarized in the document, are these. So, first, we're going to customize an existing service called template service. It's set up basically as a blank service for a new VNF. And so this is going to mean adding to the services model its Xproto file, and also adding to the service synchronizer. So then, step 2 is add the new service and also the VNF VM image, because the idea here is we're spinning up a new VNF in Chord. We're going to add the service and the VM image to a profile. A profile is kind of one of the Chord solutions that you build that brings together a bunch of services. So RChord and eChord and mChord are all profiles. And so we created a new profile that's basically the blank profile just for this tutorial. So add it to a profile, onboard the service onto the running port in a box. Apparently this is not working for many of you, but let me show you what this looks like. And we'll verify that the VNF VM is actually brought up by XOS and it's running. Next, we're going to change the service configuration in XOS. So XOS provides you two things. One, it provides you a way to kind of bootstrap your VNF, and then a way to continue to manage and operate that VNF. So we'll go into the GUI, change the service configuration in XOS, and then verify that the VNF's configuration is actually changed. Next, we'll modify the services synchronizer code. So we're updating the VNF synchronizer with some new functionality, and so we'll modify the code and then show how to update the running service synchronizer container with the new code. So this involves basically loading the new code onto the running time. So those are the steps, and it's described in more detail in this document. So, I think the way that we should do this is, since so many of you are not able to access a working pod, I will go through on the screen these steps and kind of talk through them. And if you happen to have access to a running cord in a box, then you can follow along. I'm going to sit down for this. That's why I continue to type when I'm sitting up or standing up. And I guess we're scheduled to take a break in 15 minutes. So we'll get a start on this and then break and then come back at 4:15. Okay, so the first step is to customize the service. So normally to create a new service in Cord, you would create your Xproto file, which contains your model. And then there's a tool called XOS GenX that generates some other files from this that you need for your service. So it generates basically the synchronizer stub from that file. Then you would also need to write a service onboarding recipe that tells XOS where to find basically all the files in your service, and you add it to the build system. So to make this a little simpler, we're going to, instead of going through all of the steps that you would need to use to add a new service from scratch, we're going to modify this existing blank service and then onboard the modified service into the pod. So the first step is to customize the service model. So the model is where we store the information for managing the VNF in Cord. So there might be global configuration for the VNF service as a whole, or there might be configuration for a specific VM, specific instance of the VNF. So for this, what we're going to do here is, the tutorial is mainly intended to communicate how to harness the mechanisms for doing this configuration. So we're not going to do anything very complicated for setting up the VNF. What we're going to do is simply add a string field to the model of the VNF. So here's the directory that has the service model in it. As I mentioned, it's under orchestration/XOS services / the name of this service. So I'm going to, in a window here, change to that directory. And in this directory, there's, yeah, it's hard to see that, isn't it? It's up. There's this service.xproto file. So let's take a look at that. So it's very simple model, nothing really to it. It's these lines lines here. It's got a template service model and a template service instance model. So this is the service, the global service as a whole, and this service instance model is for a particular VM launched by this service. And so I'm going to edit this file. That's not the right file. Service.proto. All right, and going back to the directions. So what I'm going to do is add a message field to each of the models. So it's this one here. This is not part of the model right now. So I'm just going to cut and paste this into the model here. I assume indentation matters.
I don't know that it does, because it has the curly braces, but let's be safe.
Let's start with all heads versus faces.
Alright, so I've added a new field to the model, this message string. Right? So let's save that. Alright, so the next step, so the model is taken care of. So the next step is to customize the synchronizer. So the synchronizer is the thing that is responsible for configuring the VM after it's brought up. So after you launch your VNF, you need to give it configuration files or hit its API and set it up, or SSH in and start some software. So this is where that happens. So for this particular VNF that we're building, so the configuration method is going to be to SSH in and then write some configuration files. Our VNF image is basically just a VM that has Apache in there. So what we're going to do is, as the configuration of the VNF, we're going to write an index.html file with some information from the model. Alright, so I'm going to change directory here. First I'm going to make this directory. And then I'm going to change to the steps directory to synchronize. Alright, so already in here, there's an Ansible playbook, the service instance playbook. So this is the playbook that's run when a service instance object in the data model gets created or changed. So I'm going to edit that thing. And cut and paste information. Stuff. So what I'm doing is adding some steps to the playbook. So right now, it doesn't do anything. It just pings, it basically just SSHs into the instance. That's what this ping target does. So I'm going to take that out and instead add these tasks. So the first one writes this index.html file from a template, which we're going to build in a minute. And then it's going to start the VNF software, which in this case is Apache. So I've saved that file. Go back to tutorial. So now we need to create this template that I just mentioned up here for an index.html. And here's the contents of it. So I'm going to that templates directory and index.html.j2 was what it said I was supposed to call this, and I'll paste that stuff in there. So this is an Ansible template, it's a Jinja 2 file, and there's variable references in those double curly brackets that appear in here. So the idea here is that what we need to do when we're creating a config file for our VNF is pull some information out of the model, say IP addresses or whatever information that lives in the model that we need, and we're going to shove it into Ansible variables and then put it, add it to the playbook somehow. So for instance, here we're going to put it into the configuration file. Again, feel free to ask questions. Okay. So we've got our VNF configuration file set up, and now we need to add the information for these variables to the synchronizer frame. So as I mentioned, we need to populate these variables with information from the model, and then this function that we're going to add is actually going to pull information from the model, this message field, and then put it into these variables. So, grab this. Now the file is this sync service instance.py is what we're editing.
So that's the actual synchronizer that Python file. Is that right?
There's two pieces to the synchronizer. There's the Ansible playbook, and then there's this is sort of like a glue file, which tells you how to run that playbook.
Right. So the playbook is going to call the functions here in Python.
It's more like the other way around. So what's going to happen, let me go over the one.
I think the actual call is given inside sync.
Okay.
Ansible.
Right, so here's the name of the playbook that is going to get called. And yeah, you don't actually see the function here. I guess it's part of the parent class. But what you're going to do is you're going to call that playbook, and you're going to feed it some variables that the playbook then uses. And so this is actually setting up those variables. All right. So I think our synchronizer is all done now. And so the next thing is we need to add the service and also our VM image to the profile. Let's see. Yeah, I think we can get this done before we take a break. All right. So we change to this directory, the profile manifest directory. So I've changed to core build, platform install, profile manifests. If I look in here, there's lots of different manifests for the different use cases that we have. So there's M-Port, there's R-Port, there's actually two M-Port use cases, E-Port, a couple of E-Port, and so we're using this one called base port. This is just port without any use case services. It's just the base services. So I'm going to edit that. And here inside this profile file, there's a list of XOS services. So these are the services that the profile knows about. So there's OpenStack service, so it can spin up VMs. There's the VTN service to provide the network overlay. There's ONOS. There's the Fabric service that would be managing the switches, but this Cord-in-a-Box doesn't have the Fabric set up. An address manager service which manages pools of IP addresses. And here's an example of adding a new service to the profile, and it's actually our template service. So all we need to do is just comment this out, but if we're adding a new service from scratch, we would put in something similar to that. Okay, so now we've added our new service to the profile. There's a couple of other things we need to do. Let's go back. So the new service is going to spin up VMs based on our VNF image. And so now we need to add that to the profile as well, so it knows where to get that image. So the image that we're going to use lives on the web at that URL, my VNF image, and so we're going to add that to the bottom of this file, XLS image. Alright, so now the profile knows about our image. Oops, I forgot to check something. Add that. Okay. So now we've told XOS about our service, but XOS just knows about it. It's not necessarily going to spin up VM images. So now what we need to do is give it a Tosca recipe that is actually going to bring up the new service in XOS, and actually we're going to spin up a VM image using this Tosca. So preparing a new Tosca recipe is kind of an involved thing, so that part has already been done for us. It's this template service.yaml, and we just need to add that thing to the profile. I'll show you this file in a minute, but first let me add it. So we're adding the Tosca to spin up the service and the service instance. And let me show you it. Okay, so this is the Tosca that is going to get executed after we install the service, and it has some things in here, like it talks about different flavors of VM image, so M1 small. Here's a VM image that we are actually going to need to change to our own VM image, because we don't want to use that one. And there's some information about networks in here, and services, and service instances, and so there's all sorts of information in here that describes what we want to do to bring up our service. But the important thing is we need to replace the name of the image. So trusty server multi-nic is the default image, and we're going to change that to my VNF image. That's the name of our. Okay. So this is set to the default image is now my VNF image. Okay. Right. Are there any other steps? Okay, so we edited the template services.yaml and changed trusty server multi-nic. And so this note here tells you about, well, okay, right now we're modifying an existing service. If instead we were adding a new service from scratch, what other steps would be necessary? And there's just adding some stuff to a bunch of other files. Okay, so now we are ready to onboard the service. Do we want to take a break, or should we just, everybody just wants to see it work, and we should keep pushing? All right, let's do it. Okay, so now we're going to actually engage the build system, and everything else has gone so well today. I'm confident that this is going to work with no problem. safest thing to do is to just blow away the old XOS and blow away the database.
Is this one original on your head node or the containers inside?
Just the XOS containers in the head node. Yeah. So OpenStack, everything else is still there. It's not touched. It's disk stuff. So this cranks away for a minute. So next step. The next step here is we want to run another target to clean up the profile. All these things are documented. It's kind of a black art to know what the things that you need to run. We're working on making that better. But the idea is that we just changed the profile out of the new service, and so now we need to tell XOS that that's what we did. So we run this make clean profile target, and now we can rebuild. And this is probably going to take, actually this is a good time for a break. This will take like 10 minutes probably. So what it's doing is now it's looking at the profile, going through all of the services listed in that profile, making sure that the model for that service is loaded into the core container, making sure that the synchronizer for that service is up to date with the latest code. If it's not, it's going to rebuild. And so since it's got a new model and it's got a new service, it's going to have to build a couple of containers, which given the networking issues that we've had, could maybe take a little while. So yeah, again, we have maybe on the order of 10 minutes here. So if anybody wants to get a cookie, then this is a good time.
There's cookies.
Actually, probably not. I keep expecting, like afternoon at a conference is cookie time. I keep expecting there to be a big pile of cookies. And
Cookies
so
or
far,
buckets of M&M's.
so far there's not.
There's
Oh yeah, right. Owen has
There's
been
buckets of those, each of them are working in it. So see how there's little lights on it? Each one of those is a computer.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're at the stage of downloading Glance
Yeah,
VM
but some of them aren't
images,
working.
so we
I'm
can see
working
our
on
new
fixing them while
image
everyone's talking.
pop up here.
Yours is working.
Oh, there it is. So it downloads.
Yeah, you got lucky. Look at the draw.
Should I run these steps?
I think
Yeah,
I'm
you also working on it?
gonna go grab a coffee.
Just
Yeah.
follow the step with my
Okay.
I was not following closely enough to know because I was trying to
Ken
fix
is
the other
just
day.
blown away by our organized demo, I can tell.
The first part you can leave, just change this one, change this one, and that.
I'm gonna go get a coffee.
因为它里面有很多。
可是他们现在访问不知道是什么。
刚刚当时的是
因为他
我看他披露的是
对啊，他说他们他不是。
我还没时间试点一点那个部署，我还没时间试过试点一个部署。
一样啊。
因为他不是换 Mac，我以前习惯用 Word。可是你我用的超市，
而且4.0早就已经不是可以了。
有4.0是上下加兼容，
没有啊，4.0开始它的文件早就已经换成了。
但是我放在3.0做一样，
就是给7啊，不是。
这应该在 GitHub。
你说什么？
我要找那个单词。
It's right here.
Yeah, in that folder, this folder. You can just see
The
it.
because my folder is a little different from the but it's under here. 水下的 option.
哦，
In order to get it in this,
It's not located.
千国就有啦，
贵公司提供新电脑，
当然没有，
千国就有了，
这还是我
立刻有，
在做。
千国就有了。
这都是
他们那个哦，对，这边有哦，外面可以。
千国有。
博士好了，
you have to go to the roles,
这么连在哪？
profile and templates. You are in the wrong direction.
连在哪里？
But it's not okay.
之前电脑换个博
Yeah,
士也
so
不
then
错。
before this one you have to
我
go.
那个他那个产看，然后你就知道他那个原本
对，你要换博士是吧？你就看一下目前的英语博士是怎么办。
CCIE 你可以换到450万就
So
好
if
了。
you go and say God pays, you are very good to go to
对对对，没有。
platform.
我刚刚突然想说是那个在他们那边说的
Now
CCIE 真的。
God pays that.
这是他们自己的那个 certified 啊。
没有，一样但他就是他们对于他们那边考试的环境非常熟，所以他可以劝你劝他们去接吻地方。
不是啊，那是他开在大陆的啊。
但是还是
还是 CCIE
还是 CCIE。
哦，证书上面写是在哪里考的？真的，证书上面写在哪里考的？所以你在美国考的跟在那边考的，企业上面会长差。
क्योंकि hands on एटलीस्ट में नहीं था नहीं हुई तो hands on
我觉得他讲的很开心。
आज जैसे सुबह वाले नहीं यार ये पूरा ट्रैक अच्छा है क्योंकि पूरा तुम कर सकते हो देख सकते हो वो सब थ्योरी ये सब थियरीज थे मतलब मैंने बस थोड़ा पढ़ा था ये थोड़ा
那台不用啊。
हाँ
他
मतलब
不处理他电脑，
गारंटी
不会去处理他
ये कुछ भी
拿到一台。他那个是他那个是网络的问题，没有是没有环境，对吧？因为
हाँ कल कल भी तुम यही कर
其实
सकते
环境跟我们
Needs
设计
to
是
do
相
here.
关。
कल सेशन कंटिन्यू रहना सर्विसेज ऑन बोर्ड
准备好抄了。
我觉得是很好的。
सेम सेशन
包括来说在办公室，办公室
फिर कर दो तुम वो अटेंड हो सकते
这办一次是没熟了，现在也还好，现在他要重点是没机器，
चल
没机器办不了。
कॉफी नहीं है अभी तक नहीं डाला नहीं डाला कॉफी ब्रेक किया पर अभी तक नहीं है
没机器也没机器啊，干
कॉलिंग फ्लावर सर
我自己责任很大。
薪水太低就是没机器啊。
No, this is not right.
我现在只有中式学校都没给我钱。
This is the
不一样啊，你后面的 offer 不一样。
后面如果要拿分数，我绝对拿不到。
真拿不到，除非你不认真修课。
那你也不会讲，他觉得是在吵，在吵。后问了。
我不知道。
我知道，
要有些的
questions.
因为他是被，老师就说他被他老板，因为他是被绑架的。 确实，他绑架他的老板，老师可能开始比较重要。大不了就做我一些东西做的事情。下礼拜给我 SC，反正我不知道你知道。下礼拜要找你谈东西。
哦，我可以。
啊，下礼拜要找你谈。
然后再弄那个一样就去弄起来。
那是一样。我要教我们的建筑师建那个历史文化。到时候他们有计划就不会建，说叫建平十八建。叫建平十八建，然后就不好意思。
现在是叫你去帮忙顾
啊？
边谁上的？
学校老师就是觉得你会建就是建到死。
I knew it would work. It's foolproof. Just cut and paste a lot of stuff into 10 different files. Anybody else out there who wants to come in?
I think, got a couple more.
Alright, I guess we can get back to it. So, the make build step completed with apparently no problems, and there's one other step, this compute node refresh. You need to run when you completely blow away XOS with this XOS teardown, because that removes the information about the nodes, the compute nodes from XOS. So you need to put it back, and that's just what that does. And so that all of the steps have completed now, and so let's see if we're actually successful. So I'm going to look at the XOS GUI, and if I need to refresh it, let's see. Oh, I tore down the XOS and started up again, so I probably need to run it. What's my password? Probably that. Okay, so over here on the left, we see that our template service, this new service, has actually appeared in a GUI, so that's a good sign. We can pop this open. Template service is there. Template service instance. Now what I would expect to happen is, so we created this template service instance, and that should also spin up a instance on the compute node with our image, and there it is. So this is the VM that was spun up, and it's flavor M1 small, and it's running our image. And let's see, I should be able to see some more information about it. So if you scroll over, let's take a look at notes. So it looks like our VM has come up. So what I did is I went over to the head node, and there's the OpenStack credentials for accessing the OpenStack API. So I just sourced those, and now I can run OpenStack commands here. So that looks good. So I looked at the Neutron networks, and I see the management network and the public networks. VM is actually up. Okay, and it is. So this is the VM for our service, and it's connected to the management network and also the public network, so it can access the internet. So it looks like it's actually come up. Right.
So that's running Apache. So you put browse to that?
Yes, let's try it. Where's my document? So we should be able to curl Apache at the public IP and 8.1.2, and we should see our web page. Okay, and there it is. So that's not too exciting to start Apache and add a web page, but if you're using your imagination, you're thinking, okay, we just configured the VNF with information from the data model.
Well, shouldn't the message that got pushed in there, like those should be blank, shouldn't they?
Well, in the model, they're actually blank right now. So that's the next thing we're going to do, is put something in there. So in our service model, the message field is blank. And so we can put a service message in there, and then save it. Now we're updating the configuration of our VNF. Here's the service instance message. I'll put in there and save it. What does that mean?
That happens when that date error happens.
Oh,
Just
okay.
refresh it,
Refresh.
refresh the page, you do it again.
There's a GUI bug apparently.
I thought that was fixed,
Yeah.
or I'm wrong, and it's something else entirely.
Let's try. Okay, it worked. So I think you were right. Okay. So we updated the configuration in the data model, and the synchronizer is maybe running and updating the configuration. Okay, and so there are the messages now. So that just shows you how you can administer your VNF from the GUI. Update the configuration. Okay, so we just did this change the service configuration step. So now we're going to do a little bit of more development on the code and update the service synchronizer. So if you need to update the synchronizer, so for example, change the format of the configuration file, you can modify the synchronizer code and then deploy a new version of it. And so here's how we're going to do it. Let's see, go back here. So we're not really going to change the code, we're just going to change the template for the web page because that's the easiest thing to verify. It's actually got deployed. And so I'm going to edit this file. Stick a message down here at the bottom. Alright, so we updated our synchronizer, and so we go back to the build directory, and we just want to update the images. We don't need to blow away XOS and build it again, because we didn't change the models. We don't need to worry about database migration or anything like that. We just want to publish a new container image with the new synchronizer. So make XOS update images and then make build. This shouldn't take as long as the last time. It probably only is going to take a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
So what was that image you URL you have given?
It's supposed to represent the BNF image that we want to load onto the pod, but it's just an image that I made by starting with Ubuntu and then adding Apache in there. So Apache is the BNF software for this example.
Okay, so in any case, you have to make some image like that with Ubuntu and the VNF inside that.
So the assumption for this tutorial was you had a VNF image already that you wanted to load onto the pod and then manage using XOS. So if you are creating a new VNF from scratch, maybe you would go that route, or there's also we have examples in XOS of you just start with a vanilla VM, and then the synchronizer can actually load the software for your VNF into that VM. So you don't need to create the VM image
Okay.
as a separate step and have it, living somewhere. You can do that through the synchronizer as well.
So this software is available on the open core.
Oh, so how do you get this?
The file at the beginning have nothing, and after you starting, for example, build this application, every place you download the system.
So if you go to guide.opencore.org, it'll tell you everything you need to know to get started.
Okay.
Okay, so right now it's going through all of the synchronizer images and just checking to make sure they're all up to date with the source code. And when it gets to ours, I didn't see it, but when it got to ours, it hopefully rebuilt the template service synchronizer because it noticed that the code had changed. And now that it has the new image, it published that to the head node and it's starting it up. So bring up XOS services is the stage we're at, so it's going to bring up the new container now. And then once this comes up, then we need to tell the sync. So it would be a nice feature if the synchronizer automatically ran when the container was updated, but that's not the case. So what I will have to do is go in here into the GUI and click Save, and now that's going to trigger the new synchronizer to run because it sees that the data model, something happened in the data model. And so now when I go back here and run my curl, we should see that new message. There it is. We have modified the BNF configuration file template. So what happened is we updated the source, built a new container, published it to the head node, brought it up, ran that new synchronizer, and now it's gone all the way through to the BNF and changed the configuration.
So you created a service as a DNS here on a new virtual like Docker container. But you could do other types of services, for instance, as well. Like could you create a service that's based around something in Monos or something like that as well?
Absolutely. And we have examples of Onos services that are running in Core. So let me see if I can find that. So there's two Onos services that are running right now. One of them is controlling the fabric, and the other one is running the VTN app that
So each of those are kind of instances of Monos.
right, yes, yeah. And each of them loads a set of Onos apps.
And that's configurable.
Right, and it's configurable. You can specify what apps you want to load, and you can also configure Onos's updated page. And so congratulations, we have completed the hands-on tutorial. I did it. Right, so here's the summary of the things that we did. Yeah, again, apologies that things were so bad with the cord in a box. Like I said, we're rebuilding it over lunch, and we thought we had the network problems worked out, and everything looked like it had worked fine, but we didn't have a chance to actually do a dry run to make sure. And that bit us, the demo curse. Yeah, so if you actually come back tomorrow, I guess you could do it yourself, or you could spin up a cord in a box on Cloud Lab or your lab and walk through these steps and just make sure that you understand yourself how everything fits together. We're working pretty hard to make this process as easy as we can make it. So for example, I pointed out at one point in the note, it says you're modifying an existing service. If you were bringing up a new one from scratch, you would have to do all these extra steps. We're trying to get rid of all these extra steps because fewer steps is better. It should be really simple to bring up a new service in Cord, and so we're trying to auto-generate as much of this as we can and simplify the overall process so it's really easy.
When you say generate the synchronized stuff, is it a GRPC stuff?
So the synchronizer stub that I was referring to is just a set of files that need to live in the source tree that can be used to build a basic synchronizer. So where does gRPC come into it? So when you are building the system, we changed the profile and we changed these other pieces in the code, and then we type make build. When you do that, it generates all the machinery for gRPC, and it also generates Tosca API, it generates REST API, and it generates the information in the GUI that you saw. So that's part of the build process, how that happens.
So that GRPC interface is talking to the model, right?
Right, the gRPC interface is between the model and the synchronizer.
Yeah, so there's a container running called the XOS core container, and that has the data model in there. So there's between the synchronizer containers and the core, it's gRPC, as well as between the Tosca engine and the core. And I think between the GUI and the core is also gRPC.
Yeah. Yeah, I always forget about that.
Well, no, it goes, the GUI goes to Chameleon, which is REST, and then Chameleon translates that into gRPC and goes to the core. So we get sort of a REST API automatically based on the gRPC API.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for your patience. Thanks for coming, and I'm sure it'll go much better for you tomorrow.
I hope so.
Well, we got some work to do to make sure that things really are working.
Oh, those are the bridge ones. So we're doing Nova Bridge.
What do you think? Is that a requirement when you add a new service? My assumption was that since you're changing the core, it's a good idea. But maybe
So
sometimes it's safe.
So run Node, the Nova command to get
Probably not, because we don't support database migration at this point. So
so something stopped your.
we haven't really worked on the support for going from one version of the data model to another. So
Something
you've
stopped
added new
your-
stuff to the data model. If you didn't tear down XOS, you'd probably get errors that your models weren't available.
the
But probably what you're thinking is, okay, let's say I'm actually operating a cord pod in a field trial, and I add a new service. I don't want to wipe out the whole database just because I added my service. I mean, that's bad. And so it is on our roadmap. It's something that we need to fix for the operational story, that you need to be able to onboard a service without disrupting all the existing services that are on there. But it's still a to-do item.
Do we have any company disclosed this one, they not try to automate all the steps here? Do we have this kind of template selected?
I'm sorry, do we have it?
Oh,
I said we were trying to automate this. No, yeah, we don't have that. I think some of these steps will go away. We've been talking about improvements to, for instance, the piece of the system that builds all the Docker images. We've been talking about improvements to that so it doesn't need so much configuration information in all these other files.
Right.
And so some of these steps will just go away. And then we were talking about the synchronizer stub that is generated through this XOS Gen X tool. We were also thinking about extending that to be a little bit smarter, and so doing some of these other steps that we did manually here. But yeah, it doesn't really exist yet. It's still
So it's on our schedule, someday we'll provide.
yeah, and I think sooner rather than later. I think it's a really high priority to make it right now as easy as possible to onboard these services. Larry was saying earlier, okay, the way you can contribute is bring your VNF and onboard it onto Cord. So yeah, I expect people are going to be trying to do that now, and they're going to get frustrated if things don't work.
Congratulations.
Survived.
Yes.
Right? Oh, gosh.
Only 2 more to go.
Next person.
Yeah. Thank you.
I assume we want to collect all of these.
We have extra copies.
Oh, we have another copy?
We have more than one
You
copy.
can keep these as a souvenir. This could be, this was my machine that was set up properly.